Hello everyone, this is Ray Space in Kerbal Space Program 1.12 with Real Solar System and Realism Overhaul, where I continue to explore options for getting to other planets in the solar system quickly. And in the previous video, I went with ion engines that ran on liquid hydrogen, and I will continue that in this video, but going out to Saturn. However, before that, I contemplated whether I should use argon gas instead. It gets a decent amount of specific impulse, 7,500, but that's nothing compared to liquid hydrogen's 22,000, though argon gas would give us more thrust and shorter burn times. And the burn times for the liquid hydrogen will once again be a bit of a problem. But anyway, I went with the liquid hydrogen, chasing after its great delta V and great efficiency, and decided to use drop tanks. As you see here, these are drop tanks that I had modeled in Blender, and we will let go of them. Those 3 drop tanks will feed the NTP system, the nuclear thermal propulsion system, and so they will be dropped by the time we exit Earth space. And then it's only the shiny gold foil tank that will feed the ion engines in the back, of which we have 12 sets, or a total of 120 ion thrusters, and those will be running on hydrogen. So that is the setup. And for the nuclear thermal propulsion system, we have 5,381 meters per second. I checked that in the SPH. So what I'm going to do is plot for that amount first, and that's what you see me doing here, just getting the 5,300 or so done, and that's still an hour-long burn, so we're going to have to go around the Earth a couple of times. And then after that burn with the NTP, I plot the next burn further out so that it's a little bit more accurate, and then try to get to Saturn with it. And we're trying to get to Saturn within 3 years, which is pretty quick by solar system standards. So normally it might take 7 years at least if we were going with a Hohmann transfer. Probably more like 8 years. So 3 years would be better, and that's what it looks like getting there in 3 years. And it's not just this 5,200 meter per second burn, it's going to be more than that. If we just used the ion engines and did not use the NTP, we would have 120,000 meters per second, which would be quite a lot. But again, I'm going to use 3/4 of the fuel with the NTP. That does not mean 3/4 of the delta V, as we'll see. Alright, so then there's the capture that you see there after 3 years, and that costs 6,000 at this point. That's going to change. Everything changes. Everything gets more complicated as we go along whenever we're using ion engines. So, anyway, first of all, the simple part, using the nuclear engine to get out of here, and this is a normal NTP Nerva-style nuclear engine. So it does not actually spew radioactive stuff. It keeps the radioactive stuff inside. And then after one firing, I deplete one of the tanks, and so we drop it. And then we go on to use the other 2 tanks on the next burn, as it is spooling up here. So there we go, leaving the other tank behind very, very slowly. Even with the nuclear engine, the acceleration is very gradual. Alright. And again, the front end of this, the crude part plus their supplies, is about 100 tons. So finally, the nuclear engine does its thing. I get rid of that node. And we are on escape, of course. We dump those 2 tanks, and then that's that. As far as whether the frame should be made this way, I think it's oversimplified a little bit. It would need some extra bits, but this was safer in terms of how to dump the tanks so that they don't get caught in Kerbal Space Program and accidentally glitch or something. So yeah, I preferred safety in that respect. Now, as it turns out, I was able to plot a 2.5-year trip to Saturn, but I probably should not have, as it turns out. But, you know, I'm looking at the delta V down there, and it looks like we have 62,000, but the stage time is 1 year and 65 days. That's why most people don't use hydrogen. Very efficient, yes, you get the 60,000 bit, but then such a long stage time on a trip that's going to be 2.5 years can be unwieldy. But anyway, I try it anyway, And there we are trying to get the Saturn approach. And we're on day 65 already here. We're still trying to get our Saturn approach on day 65, day 68 here. So I'm keeping the periapsis out of the region of the inner moons because that seems to be where a lot of radiation is. So it'd be easier if I went closer to Saturn in order to capture, but this is, again, a safety measure. But in doing so, I had forgotten one basic thing, which was that we have to go on the opposite side of Saturn in order to be in sync with its moons. We have to be going counterclockwise, and so there's the correction to get on the proper side of Saturn. And then we can talk about capturing. So, a little correction burn here. We've got 53,000 left right now. And so then we're like that. So we're getting there now in about 2 years and 150 days, but we have to slow down ahead of time. Like we have to start months in advance slowing down, so still more like 2.5 years. And so I plot the capture, and then I plot a pre-capture maneuver, and a maneuver outside of Saturn's SOI in order to help us match with Saturn's orbit ahead of time so that we don't have to do so much in Saturn's SOI. So that's this 5,800 meter per second burn first. This is before we are even in Saturn's sphere of influence, so there's still solar space. And then after completing that, this is still part of that, we can go into Saturn SOI and then try to actually capture. And this is why it always takes more. So originally it was gonna take maybe 8,000 to capture, but really it takes much more than that. And I ended up doing this particular burn to capture late, 1,258 meters per second. That cannot be done very quickly when your stage time is still 270 days. So as a result, the capture happened a little bit further out than I really wanted. Still, we did manage to capture. Just a little bit more leisurely and ending up with a much longer orbit, which wasn't great. But that's alright, I always planned to hang out at Saturn for an extra period of time, and in fact, rather than just get into orbit and then get out of orbit, I wanted to go to Titan. So here I am plotting for more Titan-ish kind of orbit, and then we had to do a whole bunch of burns to get that to happen, of course. Not just one burn, and then we have a little Titan encounter, but we have to make sure that we're matching Titan's orbit as much as possible before we actually approach it, and to be honest, I didn't do nearly enough of that, and that's gonna hurt me in the end, as usual. So I go in for the Titan encounter. It looks like I need 486 to capture, but then because I have to start the capture burn earlier, it ends up taking 650, and then I light the NTP because I really don't have enough time. What I should have done was just go back out again into Saturn space and then try to match orbits with Titan again a little bit better so that the burn would be less. Using the NTP ended up costing lots of delta V, like on the order of 10,000 meters per second with the ion engines. Basically, the ion engine delta V is about 22 times that of the NTP delta V, or the efficiency is like that. So yeah, just doing a 600 meter per second burn or 500 meter per second burn with the nuclear engine ends up being 10,000 with the ion engines. And boy, could we have used the 10,000 on the way back to Earth. Plotting the trip back to Earth, initially I plotted 9,000 meter per second burn to get out, and then 12,800 to capture, which is not great because it always costs more than it says. I tried to get MechJeb to give me a better deal. It still said 20,800 meters per second to get back in 2 years and 9 months. I plotted again, and this time I got 8,800 meter per second burn to exit Saturn, and then to capture it said something like 5,000, which was sort of magical. There are 5,872. Turns out that's not going to happen. So that's sad. But I left Saturn somewhat optimistically, but as you can see from the exit burn, definitely not according to plan there. NASA would be able to deal with all this much better than I do. I need some more practice to refine my ion engine techniques with liquid hydrogen ion engines. I'm good with the ion engines that don't take years to actually do the burns, but yeah, this is an even more arduous case than normal. So, trying to figure out about the capture. Here I still need to do 8,600 to get over to Earth, and then need to do another 8,760 to capture, which is basically more than I've got. So that's not going to work out. However, we can use up some food, water, and oxygen. Still not going to be enough. So I'm pretty confident at this point that it's not working out. And mainly I blame the extra NTP usage at Titan. If I had not done that, and I had just gone around and used the ions more, it would have been a better deal. But anyway, I tried to give them a view of Earth on the way back, even if I can't get them actually home with a capture. So here we have 7,657 meters per second left. I do a pre-SOI burn of 2,500, and then the capture is another 10,000. So way off, but with another 10,000 meters per second, like we might have had if I hadn't done the NTP burn at Titan, I think it would have been alright. Still, it's wacky that we can have 60,000 meters per second to work with and still come up short. If I had decided to return slower, taken 3.5 years instead or something like that, that would have been better too. Anyway, so there you have it, our little Saturn adventure with ion engines running on liquid hydrogen. With that, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do press like. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the comments section below, and I'll see you next time.